last week I went on a solo bike ride for the first time on the bike trail that's by my house. And I went out about 6 a.m. before the sun got out. And it wasn't too big of an issue with it being dark out. I mean, I had just bought a headlamp for my bike. The path is right alongside of a highway, so the street lights kind of give me some visibility. And it was okay riding all the way up until the point where I got to the national park. I live 10 minutes away from the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And there was a fork in the road that went into the valley. And it's like, once I got into the forest, it was completely pitch black. I couldn't see more than 3 feet in front of my bike with the bike lamp. And it was almost surreal. It was like, I felt like I was cycling in outer space with no stars. And it was very interesting, but also very nerve-wracking because for most of my life, I've lived in or near a city, and being in complete pitch black is foreign to me. So I have this natural state of anxiety and fear of something that could be lurking on either side of me on the bike trail or even in front of me. But I knew that although that this was a national park, I mean, it's right in between Akron and Cleveland. So there's not that much to be concerned about in the way of animals when you're that close to large cities. And especially where I was on the bike path, even though it was inside of the woods, there were still streets around. So that type of noise usually really discourages animals from being too active in that area. But nonetheless, there was still a fear there. There was still an underlying anxiety, and it was something that it made me think about anxiety and fear. And it's been over the past 4 or 5 months being inundated with one crisis after another. Anytime you look at the trending topics on Twitter, or God forbid if you ever stumble across watching cable news, you're just overwhelmed with things that could frighten you, that could stoke up anxiety with you. And it seems as if when you look at the data, you look at people reporting levels of anxiety for the past decade or so, you start to see an increase in that, in the levels of anxiety. And there could be multiple reasons for that. I know in my own specific discipline of social media, there could be a correlation between social media use and anxiety levels. However, it seems like this idea of anxiety is kind of running in the background for everyone. It seems like it's something that's universal and timeless. I don't think that being afraid of what could happen is something that is unique to an American in the 21st century. And I pull that idea from historian Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote a book called Sapiens. And my friend Nick Hartman and I, we actually reviewed that book, I think it was like a year and a half ago, in episode number 75 of the podcast. So check that out. But Yuval's argument was that there's this underlying theme of anxiety running in the background of sapiens, of humans. And it can be linked to the fact that our insecurity in our position on the food chain was too rapid of a jump. So, for instance, Yuval tells us that we started hunting large game about 400,000 years ago, and then we as humans gained the top place on the food chain about 100,000 years ago, and those numbers seem to be very large. It seems to be a very long time ago, 100,000 years, especially when you would be considered lucky to live 100 years. But 100,000 years compared to the entire history of our planet is very minuscule. There's a book written by Bill Bryson called The Short History of Nearly Everything, where he talks about if you were to use your wingspan as a measuring, as a timeline to measure the timeline of the planet itself. If, let's say, picture me with my wingspan out all the way. My left fingertips are the beginning of Earth, and the right fingertips are 2020. Bill Bryson explains that you could remove the amount of time that humans have been on planet Earth on that timeline by using a dull nail file. So think of your full wingspan being outstretched as a timeline. You could remove our species, the time that we've spent on Earth, as long as it's been around. You could remove it with a nail file. And I think that's incredible, and it gives us a lot of perspective, not only of like how incredible it is to be on this planet, but also how short not only our lives are, but also how fast things have changed when it comes to the dominant species on our planet. We've been in our form in a very relatively short amount of period, and to claim the top spot, Noval, going to the book, argues that humans have become top predators of the planet, and we have failed to adjust. In the book, it says that most top predators of the planet are majestic creatures. Millions of years of dominion have filled them with self-confidence. Sapiens, by contrast, is more like a banana republic dictator. Having so recently been one of the underdogs on the savannah, we are full of fears and anxieties over our position, which makes us doubly cruel and dangerous. Many historical calamities, from deadly wars to ecological catastrophes, have resulted from this over hasty jump. So we are not as a species as gracious and confident as the lion on the prairie, looking out and having that confidence within us that we're not going to lose our spot. I know that I don't know where this quote came from, but the line of thinking was that in a dictatorship, the one that has the least amount of freedom is the dictator, because every move they make is dependent on them keeping power. And as a species, an argument could be made that we're in that position. We have this underlying feeling that at any moment our undeserved, if you will, position might be taken away from us. And that breeds some type of fear within us all. And to me, there's a few things that I think of. I think of, one, the ego of being attached to the identity of whatever we are and whatever we have. Losing that makes us feel uncomfortable, makes us vulnerable, and thus we have this anxiety running in our operating system. And then also it makes me think of an imposter syndrome. I know I've heard successful people talk about how they feel like sometimes they just got where they are by sheer luck, and that they feel like at any moment they could be revealed to be a fraud. And to me, that's how I feel about calling myself a comedian. I always hate to call myself a comedian, especially now, being that I haven't performed in 6 months. But calling myself a comedian feels like I'm an imposter, because I don't see myself as, not to mention the folks that have Netflix specials, but even some of the local comics who do a great job and have fantastic sets and have a great trajectory in their career. I hesitate to put myself in the same line of work as them by calling myself a comedian. And then also calling myself a writer. Even though I write every day, I envision a writer as this person who gets up in the morning and gets to their laptop and just starts cranking out incredible amounts of work that people learn and live by. And that's just something that I'm completely way off on the mark on. So to call myself a writer seems like a lie. But I think that, on two ends of the spectrum, you have the ego, who is in self-defense mode to protect its identity. And then on the other end of the spectrum of being afraid that what you identify with is going to be exposed, and it's only a matter of time before it becomes exposed. Those two ends of the spectrum are on the same plane of reality, and that reality is our experience as humans and our ability to learn from the past and create stories about what happened, but also imagine a future, and being able to run simulations of things that haven't happened yet, but might happen. And I think that might part is what is what makes us afraid when we're riding on the bike in the dark, or that might is the thing that holds us back from signing up for that marathon, or that might is what holds us back from starting that business in the middle of a pandemic. But just as unlikely as your success is in the future, it's also just as unlikely that you'll fail. And the only way to find out, in my experience, is to experience reality in and of itself. You don't know what will happen until it happens. And when it happens, it's usually never as grandiose as you thought, and certainly never as worse as what you feared. So with that, thank you so much for listening. I hope you're staying healthy. I hope you're staying sane. And until next time, thanks for listening. Bye.